Chargers wide receiver Quentin Johnston was showing out at OTAs on Tuesday and says he wants to break 1,000 yards in year 3, but it's going to take a major leap again to get it done.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, Quentin Johnston is a very polarizing player in the Chargers world here, and he has some very high expectations for himself in year 3. If he meets those expectations, then the Chargers offense is going to be very deadly in 2025. And we also get to hear from Sanjay Lal, the Chargers wide receiver coach, and he gives us some great nuggets on the new wide receivers, including the fact that they're not really in the best of shape as of right now. And one of the particular UDFAs is already stating his case to try to make the 53-man roster.
I can't wait to talk about him because he's definitely a Jim Harbaugh guy, like we've said all along. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. David, today was the second open OTA to the media, and we got some great practice nuggets. Thank you to Eric Smith and Daniel Popper, those who covered the team, for putting out some notes because we weren't able to be there. And one of the biggest things that stood out was Quentin Johnston standing out again. And it was from Daniel Popper, who talked about last week him having 4 catches, but also him today having another 4 catches, making a big impact, having kind of back-to-back open practices where he's standing out, which is huge. I mean, for him, we know how crucial this offseason is, but I think the part about him kind of going off at OTAs right now, it's like anything and any time that he is doing something positive is going to be a positive. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but until kind of like Justin Herbert and winning a playoff game, right? Like, until Quentin Johnston shows up in a big moment, in a big game, and shows that he can make that big catch, there's only so much that we're really going to be able to say about him in the offseason. But at the end of the day, he's fighting for his time right now. He's fighting for snaps right now and trying to fend off others. So any positive signs are going to go a long ways as far as what his involvement's going to be this year.
All Quentin Johnston can do right now is stack one good day on top of another, on top of another. And we all know after watching him the first couple of years that confidence is a very, very big part of his game, and it affects how he's able to play on the football field. So this is only going to be good for him and his confidence. The more he's out there, the more he's making plays, the more he's consistently catching the football, making plays, the higher his confidence is going to be, and the better player we are going to see because of it.
Absolutely, and this is from Daniel Popper, who said the highlight of the day for Johnston was a clean comeback route along the left sideline against rookie cornerback Triquez Bridges. Johnston took advantage of a sizable cushion and drove suddenly out of his break. It was his best route of the day, and it led to a 3rd down conversion. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to woo too many people with a great play against a 7th-round rookie, obviously, but it is about stacking those days and building that confidence in himself. And when he was talking at his press conference after practice, he was asked what a successful season for him would be. And maybe I shouldn't have been surprised by what his answer is, because I think that's kind of where it should be. But what he said was a successful season for me, kind of going off of last year, just elevating off of that, probably reaching 1,000 yards this year for sure. Also said that he wanted to get more than the 8 touchdowns that he had last year, which, David, I mean, man, if for him, even though you look at kind of the progression, right? A little over 400 yards as a rookie, he breaks 715 games last season. He could gain another 300 yards, but I think it's the added competition that makes it so much harder to believe that that progression is going to keep going to that number to hit 1,000 yards, because we know Ladd McConkey is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver, right? Could they have one more? Maybe. Is that one more going to be Quentin Johnston? That's what's hard to believe right now, but I think his expectations are probably where they should be for him to kind of progress from what we saw last season.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go backwards, right? So, I mean, what forwards looks like in year 3 for him is, I think, the 1,000-yard receiving benchmark. That's what it should be. I mean, he had 8 touchdowns. Say what you will about how those were acquired. It's still on his stat sheet. So, naturally, he's going to want to eclipse that in year 3. I think this is a year after the first year having some struggles, second year showing some progression, showing some improvements. Year 3, to kind of put all of that together, this is the type of season that it would have to kind of look like in order to feel like you're progressing to that next level. But in order for Quentin Johnston to do that, we know there are a couple of things that he's going to have to fix or improve upon or show obvious improvement in year 3, right? He's going to have to show that he can create more separation on a more consistent basis. That's going to be a big part of it. Also, he's a big body wide receiver that doesn't play that way. So the contested catch situations have to be improved upon. If you want to be able to get that 1,000-yard mark, you're going to have to be able to steal a couple of those balls away from a defender, or at least get in front of a defender, use that body and go up and make a couple of those catches. That's the difference, from having a 4 or 5 catch performance that's, 40, 50 yards, from a 7 or 8 catch performance that's 75, 80, 90 yards in a game. So he has to make those obvious improvements besides obviously catching the football. That has to happen at a much more consistent rate. If he's able to improve upon those things, then I think you should feel very good about it. But I also like the fact that he said, some of the things that he had to work on, he said, besides having the football in my hands, showing up a lot on film, making big key blocks and stuff like that, and having a lot of cracks, being a part of key blocks, springing big plays for my running backs. And I love to hear that from Quentin Johnston, being an unselfish player, knowing that he wants to go out there and try to impact the game in whatever way he can.
Absolutely. I mean, that's catnip to coaching staff's ears for sure. And I think especially when you're someone who's been under the scrutiny that Quentin Johnston has been, to say, hey, this is another part of my game I'm taking seriously, even though it's not really what you're most criticized about, right? Because it's easy to be like, hey, I'm going to catch everything. I'm going to be better at the deep ball. And that's the thing about him, is it's one thing not be able to create separation, but in that case, you better hope you're Mike Williams, right? Because Mike Williams has never been a great separator, but he catches everything in his vicinity, and he doesn't have to be open to make a play. To have the not be able to separate and also not really be great in contested catch situations is just the double negative you're trying to avoid, especially as a wide receiver. But this is the biggest issue here. He averaged 13 yards per catch, so saying he did that again this season, right? He needs 77 catches to hit 1,000 yards. And at a 60% catch rate, which is what he also had last year, that would take 128 targets. And I just don't see him getting that in what should be a more balanced offense this year with more weapons to try to feed. So that would be my biggest issue with it. And we've said it before, he could have a better season and not put up as gaudy of stats if he's used more efficiently. But I thought another interesting point, something that a lot of people were talking about, was the fact that Sanjay Lal at his press conference, his wide receiver coach, said, I told him he's a starter because he is. And he also said my message to him was to keep ascending. And that is maybe not a super surprise, David. I think we all think going into training camp, he is a starter. He's not lying. He is a starter right now. But I think the ascension part is to keep your job, you have to keep getting better.
Yeah, I mean, right now, like last year, we knew that there wasn't a lot of competition in the room and not a lot of players that can push him and really kind of, take his snaps away. I think this year, that's DJ not the case. It's just not the case. There are other people in the room that are wanting that football and have a clear, skill set that suggests that they should be getting some of those targets. So it's going to be up to Quentin Johnston to prove every single day that he's the best man to be out there. And it's going to be a really tough task. Hopefully he's up for it.
Hopefully he is, and I think it's important to kind of remember, him saying he was a starter as a rookie and basically saying he surpassed like Josh Palmer to be right behind Mike Williams and Keenan Allen that year. And then last year, going into it, a lot of people were saying it might be DJ Chark that is actually the starter and not Quentin Johnston going into week 1 before Chark got hurt. So neither of these last 2 camps he's come out as a starter, which is kind of crazy. I mean, he ended up being it by default last year, but it is important for him to have a big off season. And I think the biggest thing for him is just going to be to not spiral, right? To just, if he has a bad play, to bounce back from it, to make big plays, to make you forget about the bad play, not make another bad play to compound what is already such a big frustration. But we know how much he needs to improve because there are guys like Trey Harris, like a Keandre Lambert Smith, like a Mike Williams, who are going to be trying to eat into that target share as much as they possibly can. And we're going to talk about those guys because Sanjay Lal says they're not in shape right now, and much more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel because the NBA Finals are now going to be in full swing, and every night is going to deliver highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big, and the NBA Finals are starting tomorrow night, and currently the Oklahoma City Thunder are 9.5-point favorites, and rightfully so. I mean, they've crushed opponents at home so far in these playoffs, but the Pacers have also been very good on the road. But you know me, my eyes tonight are going to be on the Stanley Cup Finals, and I'm talking about my Ice Cats. I love the Panthers tonight at plus 1.5 in this game against the Oilers in this rematch, and I also love the USA captain Matthew Tkachuk to record a point in this one. But if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place any of your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Dave, we still have more great stuff to get into because we got some really good nuggets from Sanjay Lal, the Chargers wide receiver coach, someone we don't get to hear from very often. But to be honest, I think both of us had the same takeaway, which was just a really refreshing guy. I mean, as far as just the candidness and the kind of just no nonsense speech that he gave when he was up there at the podium, and especially kind of not pulling any punches when talking about the Chargers rookies, because I think everyone's really excited to see what Trey Harris can do, to see what Keandre Lambert Smith could do. But when he was asked about him, he said, they're behind physically. This from Daniel Popper. They've been on the banquet circuit. Their fitness is not like our other guys. And he did give credit to the Chargers' other receivers. He said he challenged them to come back in shape, and all of them, to a person, came back in really good shape. Now, not so easy when you're doing the circuit that the rookies were doing this offseason. When, as he put it, you're taking top 30 visits, you're on the road a lot. You're also training for different kinds of things for the combine, stuff that's really not that football related. You can't be in real football shape right now. So the Chargers are going to take them slow, David, at this point. And I think that's really a lot due to the fact that when you have guys that aren't in NFL shape, aren't in Ben Herbert shape at this point in their young careers, better not to push them too much because you could be risking injury early on and miss time in a crucial part of the rookie's development.
Yeah, I just think it's crazy to hear another Chargers coach be as candid and open about, criticizing players as we've seen with this current administration. It is definitely very different, something that we're not really used to seeing, but I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the fact that he's able to articulate exactly what's going on and letting us know, hey, we've seen some of the things that we like, about what they bring to the table, but right now they're just not in the right shape to be able to be put out there and going full speed, which, hey, these guys just got brought in. They just got drafted into the NFL. It is prudent to make sure that you take your time, make sure they understand what's going on, make sure that they're in the right shape to go out there and be at full speed before, you put them out there full time. You got to want to make sure that they can walk before they run.
Absolutely. And also something to kind of monitor going forward. Daniel Popper said Keandre Lambert Smith was not out on the field. So something, and that's not super concerning at this point, but after these kind of voluntary workouts that we're seeing this week and last week, once mandatory minicamp starts next week, these are all going to be very, very valuable practices. Not that they're not right now, but missing this isn't something that's going to totally derail what you're going to be able to do as a rookie. But I thought it was also interesting that Sanjay said that they're both very smart. They're both picking up the offense, which when you're not in full shape and can't be a full go practice, what you can do is in the classroom. And it seems like both of those guys are, trying to be in a spot that, not to be in the spot Brendan Rice was last year, because we learned once you get your shot, you better be out there and know where you're going to be when it happens, because that's a quick way to lose that opportunity. But I thought it was also interesting kind of hearing his scouting report on the wide receivers for the first time, David, because it really seemed like he kind of saw the things that we saw in them as players, especially with Trey Harris, who he said, I thought Trey could become a complete receiver, route runner, vertical threat, intermediate routes. He has some of the twitch after the catch. He catches it strong. His size is really good. he played faster than the 4.5 40, which is something that we always said and not something that bothered us, which is probably why we were higher on Trey Harris than what the consensus was. But about KOS also, natural vertical ball tracker, check, fast, smooth route runner. It was interesting, David, to kind of hear him bring those specific aspects of those games up, because he does say also that we've seen them so far and small samples. They're kind of already seeing those skill sets that they hope would translate to the next level.
Yeah, it's always great to hear, what the coaches who are involved in the draft process kind of think about the players, especially in their position groups, and what they bring to the table. So, and also to see it coincide with exactly kind of what we saw when we were watching these individual players, with Trey Harris, seeing this guy can do a little bit of everything. I mean, when he's out there, whatever you're asking him to do, if you want him to go up and get the football, he can go do that. If you need him to run a very smooth route, snap it off, make a good catch, get some yards after the catch, he can do that as well. He has a very attractive skill set. And then with KLS, we knew this guy has real blazing speed, can really stretch the field, can really go up and get the football, can track it over his shoulder very well. And when you have a quarterback that can throw it 65 yards flat-footed, that's a pretty good skill to have. It's just great to hear these guys, what they bring to the table, what they saw, and also what we saw, and eventually, being able to imagine what they're going to be able to do in the Chargers offense.
And even though they're not playing full time right now, they are still getting some reps with Justin Herbert. At least Trey Harris, out there today, caught a pass from Justin Herbert, according to Daniel Popper and Eric Smith, who both said he had a nice play. So any of that helps. I think at the end of the day, what he's telling you here is that they think that Trey Harris can be kind of a dude that can be your an all-around good starter for them down the road, and there's no real kind of weak points to his game, and also that KOS can kind of be a legitimate vertical threat for this offense right away. And I do think that all of those things are important, and I think the other part of it is getting those parts of those games is something that they didn't really have in their wide receiver room in some of those aspects. Like, you're not saying some of those things about Mike Williams or Quentin Johnston. Obviously, Ladd can do everything, so that's kind of a cheat code, but you need more than just Ladd, which was the whole point. And now you're getting guys who can track the ball vertically, which is not what Quentin Johnston's skill set is, or be able to break off routes and create separation, which is not what Mike Williams' game is. So you're seeing those aspects, those skill sets that they thought would complement what they already have. And I think that's what makes it exciting. But it was also kind of exciting hearing Sanjay Lal talk about Derius Davis, someone who always feels like he's kind of underutilized in the Chargers offense, David, because of the athleticism that he brings to the table. But it was great hearing Sanjay Lal saying, hey, we love what Derius Davis has been able to do so far, even calling out specific plays that he made in today's practice. And that's got to be pretty encouraging for a guy that feels like he's been totally forgotten in this wide receiver core.
And he absolutely shouldn't, because this guy is the fastest guy on the field, and you see it in some of the returns that he's been able to produce early on in his NFL career. But he said he's also ascended a lot, much more confident catching a ball. He caught a deep cross today, put his foot in the ground and ripped across and came out friendly. So every day I see him making strides. The more confident he gets, the more he'll use his speed. There's so much untapped speed there that if we harness it, which we are, he's getting way better at his routes. His snap downs are really good. So I'm seeing him grow just as much as I'm seeing Q grow, which is 100% true. Derius Davis is straight up dangerous, and we've only seen it in just a few flashes here and there. But the fact of the matter is, he has the ability to take it the distance on any single play if the blocking is right, because this guy is a real spark plug.
And not only that, I think for me, the most positive thing was just the development he made just as a true receiver, not just kind of a speed threat. I go back to that Denver Broncos game, the second time they played last year, him catching that touchdown on a really ridiculous play by Justin Herbert as he's getting hit to even get that ball to him.
Great play on both sides.
Both sides was a great catch, great throw, but it just seemed like when they tried to go to him offensively, good things happened, and it does feel like he's kind of forgotten. And I do think his role will always be somewhat limited at his size as an all-pro return man that you're not going to want to risk getting just taken out and too many opportunities, because man, when he does get squared up, it looks different because of his size. But he said, hey, I mean, I think that when he says there's untapped speed there, I think it's just saying, listen, he has that kind of speed. If we can unlock the actual kind of receiver parts of his game and use that on this offense, he is a true weapon. And I think we've always seen that a little bit, but now it's going to be harder for him than ever to kind of figure out ways to get on the field with now such a seemingly deep wide receiving core if these rookies are kind of all they've been hyped up to be. But we still have more great stuff to get into because there was one undrafted free agent that even in an OTAs practice was able to find a way to stand out. And in Daniel Popper's mind has already locked up a practice squad spot. We're going to talk about Steo Clots, a guy that we've always been excited about, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. With a name like Steo Clots, you kind of have to make the roster. We're a big name podcast, or at least I'm a big name host.
No, we are.
I love a good name, and I do feel like names are going to be helpful when it comes down to trying to make these final decisions. But thank you to all the everydayers, as always, for being here with us. If you guys want to contribute on the show this week, we will be back with a Fan Mail Friday on Friday, so hit us up on all of our social media, at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We're calling to the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. Because talking about Derius Davis, taking some big hits. We're going to talk about Ladd McConkey and how he's planning on avoiding some big hits, taking some of his game from Julian Edelman and Tyler Lockett, which was pretty cool. But thank you, as always, for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, as they keep you up to date with everything going on around the league and make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. David, when you're having these OTA practices and you're getting just kind of such limited information out of the beat writers, because, I mean, really at this point, there's two guys that are writing stories about what's coming out of these practices. It's Daniel Popper and Eric Smith. Daniel Popper, so worth the price to get into the Athletic to get these practice reports, because that's how we keep up with what's going on at practice. But one guy that both of them mentioned at Tuesday's practice was Steo Clots. Someone that, we knew from the moment we watched him, like, man, that feels like a Jim Harbaugh type of player. Tons of pancakes, very physical player, a very versatile kind of hybrid type of player as well. And according to Daniel Popper, David, he had 5 catches at Tuesday's practice and somehow is already kind of making waves and making, honestly, major progress towards trying to either make a roster spot or make his way onto the practice squad.
Which, hey, that's really, really impressive, because the most important or the biggest card that he has to play is something he can't actually play quite yet, and that is the physicality part of his game. He is a guy that's known for knocking the clots out of other people, okay? That's what he likes to bring to the table, and that's what, obviously made us think, oh, well, this guy is definitely a Jim Harbaugh type of player, because that's what he likes to do. He enjoys it, and you can tell when he's out there on the field, he very much enjoys burying people and eliminating them from the play. And so if he's being able to showcase that he's not just a blocker, that he can be an asset in the passing game, that just makes the Chargers offense that much more dynamic if and when he does be able to suit up and join them, because you can't just automatically assume he's coming in to knock someone's lights out. He might sneak out and catch a few passes as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy that only had 15 catches in his collegiate career, right? So he was a tight end that's really more of a fullback, really more of a kind of just that hybrid. And I do think when you look at, what even Scott Matlock did, or even how they used Tucker Fisk at times last year, or Eric Tomlinson, whoever they kind of had in that role, it feels like a really good fit for a Greg Roman offense, a chess piece that you can move around, especially if he's showing that receiving ability. Because Eric Smith also said he had a 20-plus yard play at practice. Making explosive plays and making plays consistently is going to get you noticed, of course. And I think that even in early practices like this, I mean, there are times, David, where we've seen some UDFAs where, like, man, this guy could be a really good fit, and you don't end up hearing about him even at practices like this one, and all of a sudden they're gone the next week. So that is always something you have to be aware of when you are an undrafted free agent trying to make a roster spot. And there's no practice too small to show out on. Any way you can impress is going to be huge. But yeah, Daniel Popper said he thinks he's already kind of a lock for the practice squad. I thought that was interesting because, I mean, we said something similar. I mean, it feels like he's just such a Jim Harbaugh guy that even if he can't crack the roster, a practice squad spot seems very likely. And I think that for him, if he's doing this now without the pads on, that plays out even better because he is a guy that, if you asked him, said, hey, what is the best way you can kind of show your ability? He's going to say, well, if I'm going 100% trying to put people in the dirt, because that is just kind of what his game is. But another thing that was kind of solidified at Tuesday's OTA practice is that center Andre James is pretty firmly the third string center at the moment, which isn't super surprising. But at Tuesday's practice, according to Eric Smith, Zion Johnson took all of the snaps at center with the first team offense, and Bradley Bozeman was at left guard. So even though Andre James was the center with the second team offense, at this point, we know that Zion Johnson and Bradley Bozeman are alternating from practice to practice, meaning they are the clear top options at this point. So, David, not that this is super surprising, but it does mean that he kind of is where we thought he would be. If he wants to win that job, he's going to have to overtake both of those players.
Yeah, and I think we probably should have known it when we looked at the contract that he signed, basically a vet minimum deal. And maybe, we were just hopeful that he was going to be able to reclaim and get the opportunity to reclaim the form that he had in 2023, where he was a very, very good center in the NFL and has a ton of experience. But right now, it just seems like it is a tale of two people at that position. It's Zion Johnson, who, was the first day that he took all of the kind of snaps here in team drills.
Yeah.
And we also obviously know how the Chargers feel about Bradley Bozeman. They're very, very high on him. That's evidenced by the multi-year contract that they provided him after last season. So at this point, it seems very obvious that it's either Zion Johnson that's going to be the center or it's going to be Bradley Bozeman. Hopefully when we get to, training camp, when we get into some preseason games, they can give Andre James the opportunity to show what he's capable of doing, what he looks like with the first team offense, so they can really truly evaluate who is the best starting five guys that they have that they can put out there to protect Justin Herbert.
Well, let's be honest. If you're in a center competition, for the most part, any major progress you're going to make as far as trying to win a roster spot is going to come when the pads are on and you have actual guys rushing against you, even if it's not a game speed. That is where you're going to be able to prove it. And if you're the third string center, it probably means you're going to get a good amount of play during preseason to show what you can do as well. But I would say the one kind of positive thing here for Andre James is just the fact that they're playing him at center, right?
Yeah.
Because there have been mentions by Jim Harbaugh that, hey, well, maybe Andre James can play left guard. And Joe Ortiz saying, well, he hasn't done it, but he can play left guard. And it's just like, at least give him the chance to stick to a position he's actually played in the NFL and let him, make his best case to why he should be the starter, which I'm still not totally ruling out. I know the contract part of it for sure, especially coming off of a down season, but that is one thing you hope with this team, that even if, your coach loves a player like he does with Bradley Bozeman or even Zion Johnson, that if someone like an Andre James can come in and show he's clearly the better player, that he should win that spot. He still has to do it, right? He has to find that 2023 form. He has to have a major bounce back year to get it done. But the bar was so low that you have to think someone that at least has that kind of success in the past has a shot at winning that job. But the last thing I want to touch on here from the Chargers OTAs, really the first two practices that have been open to the media, is the defensive backs showing up a ton, David, and Tuesday was no difference, where even in when we keep hearing from these beat reporters, hey, it's not full tempo, the defensive backs aren't really allowed to challenge at the catch point, these guys still seemingly keep popping up and making plays left and right.
Well, hey, Donte Jackson, the guy who had 5 interceptions last year, nabbed an interception today off a deflection from Tony Jefferson. So that you just love to hear that. You're seeing all these guys working together, and I think in the past we didn't see a lot of tipped interceptions. It just didn't feel that way, right? So I think the fact that you're seeing it more and more and more is just evidence that they are working on it constantly, trying to get that ball up in the air, trying to get that ball in the hands of a Chargers defensive player, like they did last year with Tarheeb still being the kind of the beneficiary or helping Elijah Molden, snatch an interception. So those just, big plays. And so it's just nice to hear that hopefully Donte Jackson takes that 5 interception performance from last year and improves upon it and brings that to the Chargers defense this year, because I think that's one of the things that you look at. Hey, they were a great defense, but one of the things that was lacking, in my opinion, was just more interceptions. Outside of Tarheeb Steele, you didn't have a lot of guys that were able to consistently get their hands on the football. So Donte Jackson brings that to the table. That just brings a secondary that was already very talented even better.
Yeah, and I think for someone like the surprising thing with Donte Jackson was just the fact that he had 5 interceptions and like one of the lowest Pro Football Focus grades in the
Yeah.
NFL last year. Which, when you kind of actually bared out the analytics, he was actually pretty good in zone coverage, which the
Yeah.
Chargers obviously do a ton of. And it feels like guys like Donte Jackson, guys who put up 5 interception seasons, even on a tip ball, they just kind of always seem to be in the right place. But I think it was Popper said that he also had a deep ball, or maybe Eric Smith, that he had a pass breakup on a deep ball to Brendan Rice last week on a big play. And then he also had a pass breakup as well as the interception in today's practice. So it is giving eerily similar Christian Fulton vibes, where this time last year, obviously, it was much worse quarterbacks, especially once Justin Herbert got hurt. But like, it was like every day it felt like Christian Fulton was getting a pick, making plays. And when you're talking about bounce back candidates, so many people wrote off Christian Fulton, and now he got a 2-year, $20 million deal.
Yeah.
A lot of people wrote off Donte Jackson, and he didn't have the interest he sure thought that he was going to have. And now he's kind of showing, hey, there is something here. And Jesse Minter, maybe, and these guys, Steve Quingscale, just are able to kind of see that in these players, that there's parts that they can tap into, which is a really special coaching attribute. But it wasn't just Donte Jackson. You had Jasir Taylor reportedly making big plays at practice on Derius Davis. Derius Davis ended up getting him back. Tareeb still had a good pass breakup against Des Fitzpatrick, according to Eric Smith. And also there was, pretty much every defensive back over the last 2 open practices we've seen has made a big play, which again feels impressive considering they're kind of limited and handcuffed in what they're able to do in coverage during these practices. So I think a good sign for Jesse Minter's unit that these guys are getting their hands on a lot of balls. Obviously, with all the slot blitzes and deflections and stuff like that last year, you hope that continues and can give them even more of a consistent kind of turnover margin, because that is something that can be really feast or famine, something that's very volatile year to year of the turnovers. But getting your hands on footballs, having guys that are known to take the football away, are kind of the biggest equalizers in that sense, as far as being able to reproduce it year after year. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The plan is for us to be back on Friday, so to make sure you're back here and not missing it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as we transition to 3 days a week until mid-July. But the good news is, you know us. If anything big happens, we will be there that night or the next morning to talk about it. So never fret. We're never going to let the new schedule get in the way of bringing you guys the best content, especially when there's big news. So to make sure you don't miss it, follow us on all those places and subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. Again, if you want to hit us up for Fan Mail Friday, the best way to get on the show is a 30-second Chargers voicemail at 323-524-7924, but also hitting us up at every one of our social media accounts where we post the show every day too as well. But great to see the guys back on the field and have some fresh Chargers content to talk about, but we'll be back with you guys on Friday. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.